Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. Hi guys, we are talking about the second Dark Tower book in the series, The Drawing of the Three, and I'm using my hardcover. So this version... So we have the prologue called The Sailor, and Roland comes to on a beach, and we last saw him talking with the man in black. They palavered, and then Roland headed off. So we open with Roland waking up on a beach, and his first thought is maybe my ammo has been compromised because I'm all wet. His legs are wet. He's laying pretty much on the shore of the ocean or sea, some big body of water. And, you know, I'm not sure exactly how ammunition works, but I would think getting it wet compromises it. Not good. So that is a big part of his identity, and, you know, being a gunslinger, that's an important thing. You can't just get ammo anywhere. He sees a lobster type creature coming toward him on the beach. It's 4 feet. It looks like a lobster. It's menacing. It has these claws. He's just been woken up from practically being unconscious, and this thing is in his face. And it is much faster than he anticipates, because before he has any time to react, it pinches off some of his fingers. So it gets his first and second fingers on his right hand, which is super important for him to have these fingers, given that he is a gunslinger, and this is all in the first couple pages. And it also gets his big toes. So what the fuck? Already Stephen King has created a huge dilemma. This gunslinger is now crippled. So what the fuck? He's a gunslinger and he's ruined in the first, couple pages of the prologue, which is an awesome setup. That it's one of those things that you're thinking, oh no, now what? He's screwed. Roland kills this lobstrosity with a large rock, and he beats it to a pulp. It's really gross. And he just goes on because he's pissed. It's personal. So he faints, he's weak, he starts seeing the first signs that he has an infection, which came from the lobstrosity. And you're thinking, what the hell is going to happen? Because he's out in the middle of nowhere, he's on the shore, and he can't go very far. He's pretty much convinced he's going to die with, quote, "I am now a man with no food, with 2 less fingers and 1 less toe than I was born with. I am a gunslinger with shells which may not fire. I am sickening from a monster's bite and have no medicine. I have a day's water if I'm lucky. I may be able to walk perhaps 12 miles if I press myself to the last extremity. I am, in short, a man on the edge of everything." Page 21. So poor Roland. You're already thinking, how's he going to get out of this? Because this is a really dire situation that Stephen King has just plopped him into. And we know that he is a more resourceful man than most people, and he is calm, collected, good in a crisis, but this is extreme even for Roland. Roland walks north, and he walks until he's almost dead. He sees a door in the distance, and he walks and then eventually has to crawl to reach it. So it's about 6.5 feet tall. Hinges are attached to nothing, and it casts a shadow on the beach. And it says "The Prisoner" in black letters. So the door is only visible at a certain angle. Like, you can look at it head on and it's there, but if you walk around and try and see more of it, it disappears, which is really a neat trick. So Roland opens it, and from what he describes, we find out he is actually looking out of an airplane window. Roland has no idea what air travel is like, and it's terrifying to him, so he slams the door shut. He remembers something that Court had said, and it was a really good description of how we see things, but we don't really see all there is to see. So he makes himself stop and think about what he is actually looking at, and he realizes that he is in the sky, flying somehow, and he is seeing things through another being's eyes, which is intriguing yet terrifying. Roland sees Eddie's face in the bathroom mirror, and he knows that Eddie is sick, and the cause of the sickness is heroin. And we meet Eddie as this junkie who is trying to smuggle drugs through the airport. He is trying to bring drugs into the country. And Eddie sees Roland's eyes. Like, he knows something is wrong because when he looks in the mirror, he sees someone else's eye color. Eddie looks in the mirror and sees not his own green hazel eyes, but the eyes of a stranger. Quote, "Not hazel, but a blue the color of fading leaves. Eyes that were chilly, precise, unexpected marvels of calibration. Bombardier's eyes." Reflected in them, he clearly saw, a seagull swooping down over a breaking wave and snatching something from it. Page 34. So, Eddie knows something is going on in his head, but he's also strung out because he hasn't been doing drugs, because he's trying to get into the country with illicit drugs, and he thinks he might be having a break with reality. Roland discovers that if he wants to, he can take control of Eddie's body, which is going to come in handy. And he does this. He takes control of Eddie's body, and Eddie just blanks out during all this. So when Eddie is just gone, Roland orders a tuna fish sandwich because he's really hungry, and he calls it a Tudor fish popkin, which in Roland speak is kind of funny. So Roland goes through the door again. He leaves Eddie. He goes back through the door, the prisoner door, with his tuna fish sandwich. And in Eddie's world, the tuna fish sandwich grows transparent and just vanishes. So we know that Roland can bring things back into his world with him. So that's convenient, because that's going to help him get medicine, and that's going to help him help Eddie. Chapter 3, Contact and Landing. Two stewardesses have discovered that Eddie is smuggling drugs. They're suspicious of him. They don't know exactly what he's doing or how he's doing it, but he's acting weird, and they have him on their radar. Roland sees this, and he's like, okay, I've got to find a way to get rid of the drugs so he can go through customs, and then I'll bring the drugs back to him. But there's no way he's getting through customs without Roland's help. And that means Eddie and Roland have to converse about this. So Roland has to pop in and start talking to Eddie. Because Roland needs to talk to Eddie about this, he steps forward and he starts speaking in Eddie's head. So this allows for a whole bunch of wonderful telepathic exchanges between Roland and Eddie, planning what to do. Eddie thinks that he's in the clear. He doesn't realize, because he's too cocky about all this, he doesn't realize that the stewardesses are whispering about him, planning what to do. And Roland says, hey, you're not as, inconspicuous as you think. They're onto you. You need to get me the drugs. There's a door. All this weird stuff. So he takes Eddie. Eddie comes with him. They struggle with the cocaine that's taped to Eddie's body. Eddie's in the bathroom. The plane's already landed. And, it's really will he, won't he. The pilots are involved now. It's just a whole thing. And finally, they cut the drugs off of him, and he jumps back through the door, and no one can find the drugs because he's hidden them. But he's still acting kind of weird, and they did see something. So I feel bad for the people who, were really onto him for a reason. So Roland is going to help Eddie get through the questioning process, because Eddie is not capable. So they break the bathroom door down, and Eddie pretends that he was just feeling sick, and that's why he was in there and not responding to them. Alright, so when we left off, Eddie was being grilled by the feds. Roland helps Eddie stay calm and collected because he is able to come forward if needed and talk some sense into Eddie. Balasar's goons take Eddie and also Roland, since Roland is in his head, and they go to this tower in New York City. They have Henry in the building. He is being kept quiet by these men, and he is nodding off. They're making fun of him. He's obviously not doing okay with all the drug use. So chapter 5 is Showdown and Shootout. Eddie is supposed to go into the bathroom and come out with half of the cocaine. And Balazar's like, no, that's impossible, and it's all a mystery as to what happened with the drugs. So Balazar has one of his men go in and check out the bathroom. Nothing's in there, but Eddie is very confident, which has everyone a little on edge. It's not a normal thing to be confident about. He should be terrified. And during this time, they have strip searched Eddie, so he is naked, and Henry is being given a fix in the next room, and he ODs. He dies. So Eddie doesn't know that Henry is dead at this point. One of Balazar's men, Jack, he goes in with Eddie. Even though Eddie wanted to go in alone, he sees the door, he sees the lobstrosities, he gets sent through the door. There's a fight with Jack on the beach. The lobstrosities fall on Jack and eat him alive. Roland gives Eddie one of his revolvers because he no longer has the capability to hold both of them. Quote, yet there was some part of him that wanted to hold it, that responded to its perfectly expressed purpose, that sensed its dim and bloody history and wanted to be a part of it. Page 139. And Eddie and Roland have decided they have to have a gunfight. So they both come into the bathroom and they overhear the people telling Balazar that Henry has OD'd and is dead. So Eddie is crazed. He is insane. He's just killing people left and right. He isn't thinking about himself anymore. He's just filled with anger. Roland kills Balazar. Eddie kind of is acting so recklessly that he has become the target of a lot of different men at different points. And one guy's left. He cuts Henry's head off and throws it at Eddie. Really brutal. So Eddie loses his shit and Roland saves him. Eddie pistol whips Roland because he is just insane with rage and grief. When Roland comes to, the police are there. They have to leave, otherwise they're going to get in trouble. Eddie doesn't want to leave. Eddie is just inconsolable and he's not thinking clearly. Roland needs Eddie to be in contact with him, physical contact, in order for the door to reappear to the other side. And so he touches Eddie and he says, we need to go to the Dark Tower. Come with me. And Eddie asks what it is. Roland says it's, quote, a central linchpin that holds all of existence together. All existence, all time, and all size. Page 152. That's a very interesting component for the Dark Tower to be the center of everything. So Eddie agrees to go, and they grab some antibiotics from the stash that Balazar had in his bathroom, and they leave. Eddie is actually eager to go. Eddie shuts the door, or Roland shuts the door. Eddie is kind of in a panic because he needs a fix. He wants one last fix before they go, just to get his nerves up or whatever. Quote, there was nothing behind the door, and now no word written upon it. This particular portal between the worlds had closed forever. Page 154. So now there's no going back to Eddie's time and place. Roland takes his antibiotics and some more aspirin, and then we get into this weird chapter of kind of dreamlike stuff where Roland is kicking his infection and Eddie is kicking his heroin addiction. They eat the lobstrosities, and the lobstrosities start kind of stalking them. Roland knows that only 3 things matter: mortality, Ka, and the tower. And Ka, defined here, is duty or destiny. They keep going toward the tower. Eddie is still a little pissed at Roland. He's not exactly having a good time. They arrive at the second door, and that one is marked The Lady of Shadows. To sum up the rest of the book, we're going to go through this rather quickly to get it over with. Maybe one day I will revisit this book and make a better video. But for now, let's just get through this so that we can move on to Misery. Eddie and Roland are fighting on the beach. They are looking at the Lady of Shadows door. They open it. They can both see it's a woman who is in a wheelchair, and she is stealing from a department store. So we are introduced to Odetta Holmes and Detta Walker. Same person, different personalities within the same person. Quote, Odetta suspected Detta not at all, and Detta had no idea that there was such a person as Odetta, but Detta at least had a clear understanding that something was wrong, that someone was fucking with her life. Page 190. Odetta Holmes is a black woman. This is the 1960s, and she is in New York. Eddie recognizes that it's New York. Roland ends up going through and taking over like he did with Eddie, and he wheels Odetta through the door. So now all of them are on the beach. Odetta's a nice woman, very friendly. They like her. Eddie falls in love with her. And they eventually decipher that she is harboring Detta inside, and the two don't know about each other. So Detta makes an appearance, and she's awful. She's mean to Roland and Eddie. She causes problems. They're trying to push her, and she's acting out. She's doing everything she can to hinder their progress to get to the next door. And we find out that Odetta has had 2 life-changing traumas in her lifetime. When she was 5, she had a brick dropped on her head, and later in 1959, she was pushed into the path of an oncoming subway car. So she lost her legs, that's why she's in the wheelchair. Roland is sick again. Odetta changes to Detta, and they're trying to navigate Roland's inability to walk, really, and Odetta's inability to walk. So Eddie pushes her ahead, takes her out of the wheelchair, leaves her, and goes back with the wheelchair to get Roland and bring him to the next door. When Eddie does come back with Roland, Odetta is missing, and she's been back and forth between the 2 personalities throughout this whole thing. So the third door is the pusher, and that is Jack Mort. He is actually the one who is intending to push Jake Chambers from the first book. That's when Roland is in his head, when he appears in his head, and he stops that from happening. So Jake makes it, he doesn't get pushed. In Jack Mort's lair or whatever, he has clippings and things of his previous works, because he has done a lot of stuff. And Roland figures out that he is the one who dropped the brick onto Odetta's head. And he's the one who pushed her in front of the train. So Roland goes through a whole process of acquiring new guns and ammo so he can bring them back to Eddie and Odetta. He goes to a pharmacy and he gets himself some Keflex, which is what he had used from the previous time when he was needing antibiotics and stuff. There's a shootout at the train station. Roland ends up killing Mort by jumping in front of the train, and he leaves Mort's body and jumps into the doorway at like the last minute. So Roland has survived, and he brings the guns and the ammo and the medicine. And then we have actual Detta and Odetta, like 2 physical manifestations fighting with each other on the beach. And then Odetta becomes whole. She no longer has a split personality. She is aware of what happened, and she merges. So she's become one person, but she's comprised of 3 people, as she says. Quote, she had been 1, she had been 2, now the gunslinger had drawn a 3rd from her, page 394. And when she's talking to Roland about it, she says, quote, I who was, I who had no right to be but was, I am the woman who you have saved, page 395. And so Odetta Susanna Holmes and Detta Susanna Walker have combined to create Susanna Dean, because she's with Eddie now. And so all is happy and cozy with the 3 of them, and they're going to go on their Dark Tower journey. Have a spooky day.